thank you to whoever put the note in the chat there that I was muted. Brilliant. That was a really good intro, by the way, in case you've missed it. My name is Martin O'Neill. I'm the head of marketing for Rostify. Today we're doing something a little bit different. Today we've got a webinar that's focused on a particular skill rather than say focusing on like a product demo or inviting a guest speaker. We're going to be focused just on marketing. And the reason why we're doing that is because over the last few years, and I've been meeting lots of volunteering organizations, I've noticed that volunteer managers have to wear many, many hats. And one of the hats that they have to wear is, in my opinion, a marketing hat. You need to write engaging emails. You need to boost recruitment. You need ticket sales. You need donation encouragement. You need event management. There's so many skills that overlap with marketing that towards the end of the last year, we decided to run a few marketing focused webinars in the UK region. And they were unbelievably popular. So we've decided to keep that momentum going and do a few more in a few different regions. So it's going to be about a half an hour long session. There is a QR code that's on the screen at the moment, or a URL that you can use. And the URL is slido.com. And there's a little code there, which is 5991493. Now, we use this as a tool for during the presentation. We may ask a poll, we may ask a question, but more importantly, it gives you an opportunity to feed questions into the Q&A that we can do towards the end. And the way that that works is, say I scanned this on my phone, the Q&A pops up, and I can write anonymously if I want to, and I can just write a question on there, and I'll see that at the end, and we can share those questions with everybody. So I'm going to just quickly just double check that everybody can hear. Yes, I think everybody can hear now, so that's good. Sorry about that at the start though. So here's the agenda for today. So this will be a 30-minute session. This is a marketing basics course, really, aimed at people that work in the non-profit or volunteering sector. But if you popped along because you've seen Rostify and you've noticed this, that's fine too. But I want you to know ahead of time that I'm going to be focused a bit more on the volunteering non-profit event space than most marketing webinars would. So here's the flow. We've got basics. I'm going to go over how to think like a marketeer. So what do we get trained early on as marketeers that help shape what we do and the effectiveness of what we do? Then we've got parts 1, 2, and 3. Part 1 is building a story brand. I'll get to why that's important soon. And then part 2 is thinking of recruitment as a sales funnel. So sales is very much a function of marketing, and you'll see what I mean as we get to that bit too. And then lessons I've learned over the years. So I've been very fortunate to have a career that's spanned 15, 16 years, particularly in SaaS and technology. And I've worked for some very large organizations, particularly in the UK. As you can probably tell from my accent, I'm based in London. One of the largest websites in the UK and probably Europe is in the top right there. That's Rightmove. I was their marketing manager for nigh on 8-9 years. And I'm now working for Rostify, when I've been for Rostify for the last sort of about 4 years now. For anybody that doesn't know who Rostify are a global organization that provides volunteer management software to non-profits, events, and basically volunteer programs the world over. In a nutshell, what we do is create a single source of truth about your volunteer data and provide you with the tools to improve your recruitment with portals, email communications, fully branded, and creating an ecosystem for your volunteers to engage with. And the proof has been in the pudding as we've worked with organizations like St. John's Ambulance, St. Vinny's, Houston Food Bank, and more as we've grown. So but I'm going to be focusing just on marketing. That's enough for Rostify for now. Maybe there's a little bit towards the end. I'm going to quickly ask a question. Hopefully you've managed to scan the QR code and log on. Please don't be shy. I'm going to do this too, right, just to make sure that this works as well. But it's interesting for me to know if any of you have had any marketing training, like any formal marketing training. So luckily I have, and I've been a bit cheeky with the responses on here. So this is the lady down the bottom there. You may not know who Helen Lansdale raiser is, but she's probably had more of an influence on your life than you realize, because this wonderful woman was the first ever copywriter in Madison Avenue, New York, which is the home of advertising, at a time when a completely male-dominated industry was very, very hard for a woman to make any sort of strides into. She became the talk of the town and pretty much changed advertising during her reign at one of the leading copywriting firms. When everybody else was focused on what a product does, Helen was obsessed with how it made you feel. And hopefully you can see why I've brought her up, particularly in the industry which a lot of you would be working in. Everything is emotive, whether it's an event or a charity. You're not talking about, I need somebody to be at an event, or I'd like to raise $10. You're talking about changing people's lives or putting on events that people remember for the rest of their lives. And that's what's important about Helen, is Helen knew the difference between advertising what a product does, its features, and what it means to a person. I'm a big fan. I could probably just do a 30-minute presentation just on Helen, but I'm going to skip on. But she is framing what I'm going to get onto on this call. So how to think like a marketeer, right? So predominantly there was a lot of people on there that didn't have any formal training in marketing, and that's absolutely fine. It's fine in the sense that, do you know what, actually no, it's not absolutely fine, because you're put into roles where you're required to do marketing functions. You're required to write really engaging emails, donation requests, to maybe improve recruitment, but you've probably not really had any specific training on marketing itself. You're just expected to do that, and I hope that doesn't sound too flippant or spiky really to the management that you've got within your organizations. The chances are you're doing it because you're good at doing it, but you can always improve. And I think over time, if you nurture that marketing muscle that you've got and you work on that, everything that you do from recruitment to donations will increase and be way more effective. So thank you for everybody. Love this, people getting involved in this. This is really good. Yeah, most of you are managing volunteers. All of the above is scary, isn't it? So having to wear a lot of hats. Okay, so here's some of the basics. So when I first started out, this was the core: product, price, promotion, place. These are the 4 P's of marketing. You get taught that very early on. These are fundamental, and although that is incredibly sort of basic, I mean every marketing product goes through this. I want to focus on one specific thing during this call, and that is that people don't care about features. So you can have something to promote. In the instance of this call, we're just going to talk about probably volunteer recruitment or an event or something like that. But predominantly, it doesn't matter what you're selling, whether you're selling soap, cars, or holidays. People don't care about the features. They care about how it makes them feel. And there's a professor called Theodore Levitt, and he was a Harvard professor in marketing and psychology. And he has got one of the best lines in marketing that I absolutely adore. He said, big auditorium full of people, and he started his seminar, the first one of the year, with, people don't want a drill bit, they want the hole that it makes. And I can't think of a more simple way of expressing what marketing actually is about than this particular slide. So if you're ever producing anything that is incredibly factual, or are you free on this date, can you do this thing, it doesn't engage with anybody. You'll probably find that people click on it less, open it fewer times. Just general engagement just falls off. And the reason for that is because it's all about framing it, right? So when you promote an event or a volunteering opportunity, ask yourself, are you asking volunteer with us, or are you saying help us make a difference? I don't want to call anybody out, but I've looked at a lot of the names that are booked onto today's webinar, and I've looked at your websites. And don't panic, I'm not bringing up anything, but I will tell you that a very large proportion of people that are on the call have websites where it says volunteer with us, volunteer today. can you volunteer, or something like that. And although it makes sense from a sort of click point of view, you know what you're getting, the way that the whole thing's framed is factual. It's dates that you're doing something, and can you do this, and here's a form. Very few organizations get the difference, the outcome focused part, right. um, I'll show you a few examples that are going to come up about what happens when you do consider these things, and it does make a massive difference. So here's a few organizations that we work with. I call it the hook, right? So the hook is why you don't need to ask people. Why, if you just get the hook right, if you position what you're trying to do, and this is all marketing, if you position the product the way that you need to, you don't need to ask, people will come. So Cancer Research UK, wonderful organization in the UK, they, all of their marketing, all of their donation requests, or anything they do when they're promoting their mission, their goal, is all around empathy. They have an awful lot of content that is factored around empathy, the feeling of imagine if that was part of my family, how would I feel? Guide Dogs is another wonderful organization. Animal welfare charities are huge in the United States and Canada as well. And one of the things that they focus on an awful lot is admiration. Isn't it wonderful that you have taken on this dog to foster, or and things like that? And that a lot of their positioning is around kind of making the people, the girl in the red jacket, a hero, and centering around that. And then an organization, South by Southwest, which I had a call with them a couple of weeks ago, and we put a new case study for. Basically, they grew their volunteer pool from zero, because COVID completely knocked it out, literally down to zero, all the way back up to about 2,000 in the last couple of years, just by using our platform. And their marketing is spot on. Everything is lively. It's kind of like that Zoomer TikTok bait, where it's all very, very quick and whizzing along, but they do this for everything. So they understand their hook. They know the emotive thing. So just going right back to Helen again, none of these say literally what they do. They always use a hook, an emotion, a feeling, rather than a feature. The power of a story brand. So there's a book that's going to come up on here, and I'll show you to, but I'm obsessed with it. I absolutely love it. But before I get to that, I'm going to quickly just show you how things have changed in marketing over the last couple of years, and why the story brand element is really, really important. So back in the early 2000s, I was just starting out as an admin assistant for Schuko, German construction company, learning my trade in marketing. At that time, everything was display advertising, and that's about broadcasting a message, right? And it went from there to social media. One of those things that I wish we could kind of take back, to be honest, and delete, but we have it now and it's here. Facebook and was launched, and that became a wave of a new way of advertising. The kind of impact, I suppose, to the consumer or to the volunteer is connect with other people, right? So that's social proof, that social element. Here's Guide Dogs do this really well. They use Facebook incredibly well, because they make, like I said before, heroes of the people that support their organization, and that's that element of social proof. Then there was a bit of a professionalization of the market, and I'm not saying everything before that wasn't professional, but it was kind of ad hoc. There wasn't as much structure. Marketing automation was brought in, and that means that you started to get, everybody on this call started to get emails and messages that feels a little bit more tailored to them. You started seeing display advertisements that were following you around a little bit more, and felt like it was relevant to you, rather than just a random advert. The rise of the influencer sends a shiver down my spine. But Instagram and YouTube were very much the key tech during a time where we trusted people, because these were just humans, right? And they were telling their stories, and we engaged with them, and we felt that they seem real. And when a real person tells you that they endorse a product, it seems to hold a little bit more weight. And then now we've gone into the AI, which is kind of like the opposite of that, really. We've kind of gone from people to now process and algorithms. I was a little bit skeptical of this, particularly from a marketing point of view when it first came in. But now, hands up, I use ChatGPT and Gemini AI Assistant and content creation quite often, and I think it can be a really good tool for that. As an industry, we're starting to learn. As the volunteering sector, we're starting to learn a little bit more about how it can be implemented. Rustify actually we had a product call this morning as part of our team, and we've got some new tech that's on the way this year about AI assistance that is really exciting and really cool. So I think used the right way, I think it can be an excellent way of connecting with people, or really a means to an end, right? So you need to get something done. It's a good tool to do that. The missing element here, and this is the thing that I think we're going to see over the next couple of years, is an era of authenticity. Authenticity resets, it's being called. I think this is the bit that's important, I think, for everybody that's on the call, because everybody in the volunteering sector, you're all, doesn't matter if you're doing mass sporting events or you work for a charity, you have amazing real stories to tell. And as the push away from AI and computer generated content is going to be very much a real thing, people will be going to be when everyone's zigging, you're going to zag, right? So when everyone's sort of seeing AI everywhere, the thing that gets noticed is the opposite of it, and that this is going to be the authentic element. So if I was to encourage you to do anything, it would be make sure you're collecting stories, because you can use the stories to link to your hook, to link to your marketing, and over the next couple of years, this is going to be the thing that really connects with people. So I'll give you an example of a really good use of data and tools from an organization that uses Rustify, Formula E. It's the Formula One, but the electric version of that. So hopefully the sound works. So if you didn't catch that, that was Emma. She's the volunteer manager for Formula E, and she basically could see the data suggesting that their key driver for recruitment was a channel that they never even used. So their volunteers were uploading content, and they were doing the recruitment on their behalf. How are we getting people from TikTok? We don't have a TikTok account. And I think that that's a really neat way of connecting to what I was talking about earlier about real stories and real people. This is happening organic. Emma didn't do anything to make this happen. It was just that people were connecting with other people, other volunteers, real stories. So here's a marketing basic, I suppose, is think about the community that you've got. How can you do what Emma did? How can you use your community to help with your recruitment? So we get often asked what social media channels should organizations be using. There is no set answer for this, but what excuse me, what I thought we'd do is show the most common ones and then show how we think you can use those tools. So Blue Sky is great for announcements. You know, if you've got like an event coming up, it's a great place to put it. Facebook is really good for recruitment and engaging. To create wow moments, you can use Instagram. The business element of LinkedIn is a really good place to talk about impact. So if you do have a yearly impact survey, I would highly recommend making sure that you post that on there. If you're lucky enough to have a podcast or people that regularly produce content for you, then Spotify is a really good place to put that content on there. This is what Emma was doing. She was giving, well, she wasn't doing it, it just happened really, but giving volunteers a platform. They were already going towards TikTok, the younger generation. which is a lot harder to recruit for, Gen Z. That's a channel in particular that they're using a lot. And then you've got YouTube for longer form videos to help maybe recap on a year that you've had before or on a recent event. So one of the brands that I'm really impressed by, and now we're going back to story, right, and why story is important. One of the brands that I'm really impressed by is Patagonia. So everything that they do, they tie around sustainability, and they know that clothing in general has a bit of a bad name really in the environment and sustainability, but they make it the core of their brand. They know that people that buy from them have made a conscious decision to go that way. Airbnb is another good example. I mean, they've had a little bit of a rocky road over the last couple of years because of a bit of a kickback from people living in communities where there are a lot of rented Airbnbs, but they've pushed against that a little bit by trying to build a sense of community, by trying to pull everybody into one place and share their stories, their Airbnb stories. And I'm a big fan of Tony's big fan of it, but it's hard to pronounce, Chocolonely. What a wonderful organization. I mean, obviously they make chocolate, but they do it in a way that's fair for farmers and ethically sound. The bar itself is quite interesting because each segment isn't even, and that's actually to tell the story that actually when the product gets sold, it isn't evenly distributed. The farmers get one bit, the retail gets another. So they've actually got their product telling their story too, which is an excellent way to position it. So here's a book that I adore. It's by Donald Miller, and it's Building a Story Brand. And I'll basically explain this process that he's got. At the start of his book, he frames this, where much like a movie, every bit of marketing for your organization, so whether you're a charity or an events company, you're going to be taking somebody on a journey when they interact with you, and that's your brand story. And they position it like this, and I'll explain what it means in your context. But you have a person, a character, right? So this is your core individual, your main customer. I'll position it the way that Donald does it, right? And then I'll show you what it means to your brand. But he says every film has a character. Every character in those films, and your leading character, has a problem. More often than not, they meet somebody that can help them, who gives them a plan, and that plan puts them into action, and that results in either success or avoiding failure, but they're putting them on the route to something. Another way of looking at it would be a little bit like I don't know, like Frodo from Lord of the Rings. His problem is that he needs to get to Mordor. He meets Gandalf and the other characters, and they put a plan together to call them into action, to go on the journey to, I don't want to spoil the end of the film for you, but do something that's important. But I'm going to show you what this means potentially for a brand like Patagonia. So they say their character is their consumer. Their problem with that consumer has is they would like to buy clothes, but they know that it causes harm. They are the guide. So they say you can buy clothes and you can buy them ethically, and you can do that through the messages that we put out. So don't worry, we make sure everything is ethically sourced and things are recycled and etc. So they make those clear messages available. Then the action is really, really simple, which is buy at the store or whatever it is. That results in me feeling a little bit better because I've gone and bought something that's a bit more ethically sound. I found the thing that I want to wear. I didn't have to compromise any of my principles to do it. And that's very evident in their marketing. And I think if you take that structure of here's the person we want to connect to, this is the challenge that we've got, and give them the guide, the advice, and the journey to go on, it sounds like a lot, but it actually can be summed up incredibly short when you understand the journey that they've got to make. Making clothes causes harm. Here's what we do. This is what Patagonia do, and it's a really smart way of positioning it. Here's a volunteer example, right? So a potential donor or volunteer. I want to help, but I don't know how to do it. You could say, well, there's plenty of ways that you can support our mission. Here's our volunteer portal. You can find out what volunteers do. You can see volunteers. Maybe there's videos that pop up with volunteers telling their stories. Here's the form and everything that you need to sign up. That results in me feeling good because now I don't have to worry about it. I did want to support this organization, but they've made it perfectly clear what I need to do. And now I feel like I'm a member of the community, and I avoid feeling unappreciated. Like I haven't been told all the things that I need in order to support you as an organization. So yeah, that's Donald Miller's book. I use it all the time. Every time I've got like a marketing project, or we're launching a new product, or something like that, I always run it through this filter. What are we trying to say? Who's it for? What's their problem? What do we need to tell them? What do they then need to do? And how does it, and what does success look like? Or where do they go on to from there? Okay, so this is part two. Thinking of recruitment as a sales funnel. I know this is a little bit of a funny way of thinking of volunteering, because we don't necessarily tie volunteering to sales, and you shouldn't really. The two things are very, very different. But the way that you can think about the efficiency of who you're bringing in to your organization, and then how much of that actually goes on to support, that's very much like a sales funnel. So these are all the people that applied for a position. Did you make it easy for them to do it? You probably didn't, and a lot dropped off. And then were you really, really clear on what they were going to do? You sold the opportunity to them, and you got them in the place at the right time. You can see that all the effort that goes to just get that attention, all those little white dots, results in just a few towards the end. That's an awful lot of wastage. And you might feel all right because you maybe hit the quota that you need to. You know, we needed 100 volunteers and we got them. We needed $1,000 of donation and we got it. But how much did you lose because you didn't make the process clear enough, or sold the mission well enough? I'm going to bring up an example here. This is a wonderful charity that I volunteer with too, called Literacy Pirates. They basically do online and in-person reading courses with children. And the reason why I bring them up is because they basically founded this in our minds. We met with them, and they explained that they looked at the conversion rate of the number of people that applied to volunteer, plus the effort and the expense and the cost and the background screening and everything like that that goes into it. And by making sure that each step along their journey was refined and they were clear with their marketing messages and what they were doing, they actually improved their conversion rate to over 30%, which is an awful lot, which is really, really good for them. And it saved them so much money in not having to screen so many people. It saves so much time in not having to onboard new people and do all the training that they have to do. It's a really smart way of looking at your process, but with a marketing lens on the top of it. And here's part three. So we're coming up to the end of this section before we go on to any questions. Here's a couple of things that I've been taught in my career from either senior leaders or marketing directors I've worked with. The first one, I was told this by a marketing director, and is not your friend. I like this a lot. And what this basically means is, if you've got something to say, don't add to it. If you have an email that you're going to send out, just do that one thing. Make that one thing really clear. It's very, very tempting that when I've got your attention, I'm going to add this and this and this. And every "and" just dilutes your message. So if you want something to be punchy and you want something to be clear, if that's a subject line in an email, if that's the opening paragraph of text in an email, or maybe it's some display advertising you want to do for donation raising, stick to one thing. You can test multiple things, and I encourage you to do that. But when you're sending out a message, super simple, "and" is not your friend. All it does is dilute the message. Become obsessed with problems. Another thing I love. If you are obsessed with your customers, I say customers, but you can make that relevant to whatever markets that you're operating in. But if you can become obsessed with your customers' problems, you will write better content. You will tell better stories. You'll position things much, much better. I am obsessed with the problems of the volunteering sector. I ask people all the time. I volunteer as well as go and visit a lot of the organizations that we work with, and I just want to listen to the troubles that they're facing, because the better I understand that, the more I can frame some of the things that I know that we can do well to support them. or identify ways that we're maybe missing out on. But we can't do that, and they struggle with that all the time. Maybe I should tell people in our organization. But if you become obsessed with problems, you become better at writing solutions, and that gets people's attentions. It takes less than you think to stand out. The reason why I think this is one of my sort of key three basics is I believe that there is a baseline that you see for most marketing content that goes out there, and that's fine. But the stuff that works are the things that people have made an effort to do something a little bit different. A short anecdote here. I worked with a chap called Ian, who was a marketing director for an organization I worked with. He was working many years ago. He worked for Johnny Walker, the whiskey, and he was in a supermarket, and he looked along the shelf, and all of the whiskey labels were all straight, running along, and he decided that his label should go at an angle. And that is all they did. They just tilted the label of the whiskey at an angle, and that meant that when you're scanning on the shelf, you notice that one, because it takes less than you think to stand out, and it had a huge impact. And that's the reason why, to this day, that's what that label is like that, because Ian stood in the supermarket and noticed that everything was lined up straight. In summary, okay, so these are the sort of 1, 2, 3, 4 tips I just quickly do. Start by learning your brand's unique story. So when I said about StoryBrand before, understand what your story is. Ask your volunteers why they care, right? And that will get you to your pain points. Why is it that they get involved? Use those pain points, become obsessed with problems, become obsessed with pain points to build better stories. That improves your cut through, the effectiveness of the marketing that you're doing, and focus on feels, not features. So back to Helen again. Helen was amazing because she knew that people don't buy because it does something. Is because it's something, because of an emotion that it will bring out, like a hook. And I get asked quite a lot about some of the tools that I use. I use Monday.com for a lot of the planning. There's some books that I would recommend, which is Zeph Godin's This Is Marketing, Building a Brand Story, and cheap and cheerful tools like Canva and ChatGPT and all that can really help you shape your messaging too. That felt like a lot to get through in half an hour. So thank you for sticking with me, and hopefully we've got some questions that have come through. I can't see any at the moment, but if anybody has got any that they want to ask while I just get to the next slides, feel free to add them in the Q&A on the app while I go through this. We've got a couple of webinars that are coming up really soon. We've got Blessings of Hope, who are going to be joining us on the 11th of February. They're an amazing food bank charity that we work with. They've grown their organization so well over the last couple of years with using the Rostify platform, and with all the changes that are currently in place for food security, with changes to SNAP and things like that. There's going to be extra pressure on the food bank industry in 2026. A lot of charities are going to see increased demand. It's really interesting to hear from them how they cope with the increased demand. And we've also brought RKD Group, who work with a lot of, they're basically a strategic consultancy that work with a lot of the leading food banks in the US. They're going to be joining on that call as well. So it's Jen from RKD and Katie from Blessings of Hope. I can't wait for that. And Chris, I've done a webinar with Chris before. He's brilliant. He works for SJ Consulting. He's really good at communication. And then what do you write in your emails to encourage more people to go from doers to donors? So some of the things that you would have picked up from today's call, that'd be good to factor that into your email communication too. There doesn't seem to be any questions that have come through, but you'll get an email from me as a follow-up anyway, just to say thank you for being on the call, and here's some links to some of the things that I've mentioned on this call. If you do have any questions, or there's something you want to follow up, or you're just interested in maybe seeing a demo of our platform as well, that would be great too. By all means, connect with me on LinkedIn as well. And that's it. We only overrun there by about 30 seconds, I think. So thank you very much for everybody that's joined, and hopefully we'll hear back from you soon.